G'day, Mike Palmer, Michael Palmer Consulting. I'd like to tell you another story. In some ways, this is a funny story. In other ways, it's a tragedy averted story. When I was at university in Sydney doing agricultural science, I had a taxi license and I drove a cab part-time for a bit more cash flow. And every time I booked a car, they gave me the same car, and I didn't understand why. It was a 64 EH Holden, which I think is one of the best Holdens they ever made. Its number was 66, and I never understood why they gave me the same car, but it turned out later that it was the managing director's car, and they picked me out of the pool somehow and wanted me to drive the managing director's car. One day I picked up an American tourist in the city and drove him to Tamarama, a beach suburb in Sydney, and talked to him the way I talk to anybody, just had a conversation. He said he was lonely and didn't know anybody in Australia, and I said, I go to the university, there's always parties, give me a ring. I actually never went to university parties. I didn't like that scene at all. But he had my name and phone number in his pocket. It turned out 2 weeks later that he had shot and killed a taxi driver the very night before I picked him up. I picked him up at lunchtime on a Saturday. On the night before, he had shot and killed a taxi driver at Tamarama. And when they arrested him, he still had my name and phone number in his pocket, and he told the police that Mike was the only person in Australia that ever spoke decently to him. What he called decent, I called normal, because we were brought up with manners. But to me, it was just an enjoyable conversation with a passenger. He put a plastic bag in the boot, a big plastic bag in the boot, and I just casually asked him, what is that? And he said, it's spearfishing equipment. And I accepted that because that's what he said, but it turned out to be an armory. He had rifles and sawn-offs and handguns and everything, and he was armed with a Beretta in a shoulder holster while he was in with me under his jacket. And the police rang Mum, because I lived at home until I graduated, and said the only reason Mike is alive is because he spoke decently to this guy. Anyway, he paid the fare for me and got out. I was able to keep in touch with the story because one of the arresting sergeant was a rugby union supporter, and I was playing rugby union. So when my club played his club, I was able to go to the bar and catch up with him. And this American tourist turned out to be a bad person, and they finished up deporting him. When I went to the inquest, or when I went to the trial, he was sitting in the corner, handcuffed to a detective on each side. All I could do was to help trace his movements between the time of the murder and the time of the arrest. But his face lit up when he saw me, and he called out across the court really loud, "G'day, Mike, how are you?" It turned out that I was the best friend of a murderer. But anyway, I survived, and looking back, it's a humorous story, but it may have had a tragic outcome, except that I treated him with respect. And that taught me that everybody deserves to be treated with respect, and I've done that. I've worked with people from many different countries, many different religious backgrounds, Indigenous people, young people and old people, and I treat everybody with respect, and that's really, really important. Thank you for listening.